Hello and welcome back to Continental Club Extra, where we show Premier League fans exactly what they've been missing from across the continent. Now, as I said last week, we're going to be quite flexible with this show. We might review some of the weekend's action, we might preview some Champions League games, we might put a certain transfer under the microscope. But today I've got Zach Jalab with me, and we're going to talk about the Champions League draw, which took place yesterday. Threw up some bumper ties. That's because @Milanista2 said, which team do you think got the hardest Champions League draw? Now, Zach, before we start, it is worth noting that obviously it's early November. These games don't take place till February.
Yeah, long time.
But it does feel like the hardest draw so far from an English perspective is Liverpool against Real Madrid. I mean, that's a really tough tie.
Yeah, if you look at the tide's current form, I know obviously Real Madrid lost last night, when we're recording this anyway, but Liverpool's overall form in general has been really poor this season. And maybe you can put it back to that Champions League final where it began. Obviously, Liverpool are 8th in the Premier League and Real Madrid are 2nd. And obviously, they are probably, you still think, favourites to go on and probably win La Liga. But when you look at that tie, and as you said, there's a lot of things that can happen in that time. There's a World Cup that can happen. There's a January transfer window that can happen. And you'd like to think, with the issues that we've raised multiple times about Liverpool's midfield, the issues of needing cover in certain areas, you'd like to think they would be addressed come the January transfer window. The worry is Real Madrid can do the same. And when you look at bank balances, and it's very doubtful that Liverpool have their new owners if that does go through by that time. Real Madrid are just a superpower, and the players that they've got there, the experience that they've got there, they just they're massive in comparison, especially in recent history in the Champions League. But yeah, when you look at that two sides, it's going to be, if you're a neutral, it's going to be a really fun game to watch. But then we kind of look back to that final when you saw kind of how Trent found it really tough against Vinicius Junior. And again, after a World Cup, who knows, maybe injuries could happen, but assuming where we're at the moment, it could be quite tough. And so, yeah, I think if you look at it on just the face of it, this is a tough fixture. I personally would like to think, and it would be quite shocking, I think, if we got to that point and they're still in this rut, that Liverpool sort it out. Because if they are still in that rut, then it's no more of just they're going to figure it out. It is Liverpool bad, and they do need to finish the season just about limping to the finish line. Whereas Real Madrid, when it comes to the Champions League, and especially knockout football, they just get it done. Carlo Ancelotti, last season, his Real Madrid side, every time I thought, wow, they're out, there's no chance they're going to make it, he would show why they made it to the final and how they won it in that last game. And also just a psychological edge that Carlo will have over Klopp. He beat him in that final when actually, if you're being quite honest, I think a lot of favourites were Liverpool. And he went all that way. Yeah,
he absolutely did. I mean, that Champions League run defined by Karim Benzema. But Liverpool have such a poor record, or recent record, against Real Madrid in the Champions League. They haven't won any of their last 6 games against them. They lost those 2 finals in 2018 and 2022, of course. Also made the final in 2019. So while Liverpool probably haven't had the success domestically, I mean, in terms of Premier League titles, they got that 1 Premier League title. It's really been the Champions League that has been their refuge. But I totally agree with you on current form, which will be out the window by February. It's definitely Real Madrid's to lose. Fede Valverde's playing exceptionally well. Vinicius Junior is going from strength to strength. And Karim Benzema has had a comparatively slow start to the season with a few muscle fatigue issues than he did the previous year. So definitely up against it from a Liverpool perspective, I should say. Zach, let's move on to the big one from your perspective. Chelsea versus Dortmund. I believe this is the first time you guys have met in competitive competition. I definitely can't remember any meeting. And what are your thoughts going into this one?
No, I'm really interested for this, just more for that side of things. It's like when we played Real Madrid and we hadn't played them in, I think, ever or for such a long time. It was fun to watch, and obviously in that time it was good for Chelsea. And then we played them the year after. So yeah, it'll be nice to do that. I'm going to try and personally go to the game as well. I'd love to kind of go. I've always wanted to go to.
Do you think you might do Dortmund away?
That's the ideal one I want to do. Try and go to, obviously the away leg is the first leg is away, and try and do that. Obviously I want to see the Dortmund fans, but apart from my personal wants and needs, yeah, it's a really interesting game. I think Chelsea can kind of go. especially when it was getting to that latter stages and PSG hadn't been pulled out yet at that point, and there are other teams available, or tougher teams available. I think Chelsea getting Dortmund is pretty good. It could have been easier per se, but it also could have been much tougher as well. So I think it's a decent knockout stage. Yeah, look, I think again, if you're looking at current form right now, people are going to go Chelsea. This is going to be not as easy as people think. And of course, I think at any point playing Dortmund with a Jude Bellingham and the young side that they have is never going to be easy. But you like to think, again, kind of what we've mentioned with Jurgen Klopp, that in 3 months' time, post-World Cup, post-January transfer window, where you kind of assume that Todd Boehly and co will spend in that month, that Chelsea will know a bit more about themselves. They'll know what they want to do under Graham Potter. They'll know what how they want to play, the players featuring where. And also the big one for Chelsea, their injuries will hopefully have slowed down, or at least their main players would have come back from injury. Getting Reece James back into that side, you assume, hopefully by that point, unless things go really, really poor. I saw today something that he's hoping to be back by the end of this month, which would be quite shocking. But yeah, having those guys back is huge for Chelsea. It's basically win or lose without them. And so, yeah, I'm very interested in this side. Obviously, I think Chelsea still need to fix their attacking issues as well. No matter what you say, I think apart from obviously the fluke against Brighton, Chelsea's defensiveness under Graham Potter have actually been pretty good.
Yeah.
Whereas their attack is still an issue, and that was the same under actually the past couple of managers that their attack would kind of stall. But one thing I will say is there are still a lot of players from that Chelsea run and win in 2020 that have the experience of playing knockout football. And whilst I did believe that Thomas Tuchel himself is probably one of the greatest coaches in the world at knockout football, the players that he had also were there for him, and they've done this several times. And I personally think they were kind of unlucky against Real Madrid last season. And so, yeah, from a Chelsea point of view, I'm not really touched enough probably on Dortmund there. I think it's a good fixture for them to kind of help them maybe progress to the next stage. As for Dortmund, I think that's a game where they'll be looking at one as like players trying to put themselves into the shopping window, and to showcase what they can do. But two, I don't think they'll be looking at that game thinking, oh, we're just going to roll over here. Sure, they're going to make this very, very tough. And you saw them against Man City this season, what arguably the best team in the world, make it very, very difficult to win.
Yeah, they were much more composed and compact than in previous years. They still have lost 4 league games, but surprisingly, in this weird Bundesliga season, they're only 3 points behind Bayern Munich. So they're still in a title mix. Their Champions League form, I think they won 2 of their games. As you said, much more solid against Man City. And they were really propelled forward by Jude Bellingham, who ended up with 4 goals in the Champions League. Ridiculous. He's fast approaching some of the records of the legends of English football in terms of midfield players, in terms of that scoring record. So definitely one to watch. Yusufa Moukoko as well, 2 goals at the weekend. He's got 6 goals and 3 assists now in the Bundesliga. I think he's averaging a goal contribution around every 100 minutes. So he's really exploding. Another 17-year-old. And you talk about shop window. He's out of contract next summer as well. So this is a great opportunity for him to show that he can make that next step up. Right, let's move on to Spurs versus Milan, because again, Spurs' form, not brilliant. I think they've lost 3 of their last 4 league games. Milan, this feels like quite an even fixture.
I completely agree. I was speaking to a few Spurs fans yesterday, and they were quite happy, obviously, for this result. Obviously, the history that AC Milan bring. But they kind of were acting as if it's a bit of an easy fixture. And I don't believe that at all. Obviously, I think they might have just seen the Chelsea result and games against them and that second leg at the San Siro.
They had a lot of injuries
San
that time as
Siro
well.
had a lot of injuries, and also like they were kind of unfortunate with that red card as well that just ruined the game for them. I have images in my head of Leao absolutely ruining Emerson Royal.
Well, he could be ruined by anyone, to be honest.
Indeed. But then the idea of you then add Theo Hernandez to that left side, and it's going to be a tough day for whoever's playing on the right side of Tottenham's defence. Again, as I said to other teams, Tottenham, you would like to think, will go out and strengthen in that area at right wing back and make it a bit tougher. But it's going to be a really interesting game, this. I think it's going to be really, really exciting. Obviously, first leg away at the San Siro, second leg back in England for Spurs. But just based on their last Champions League game against RB Salzburg, basically Milan scored 4 goals. Giroud is, again, playing to an incredible level in this competition and in the league. I think they're a side that if Spurs underestimate, I think it wouldn't shock me that they lose. And then you've got to add Antonio Conte's record in the Champions League. Will Antonio Conte even be there by that point? Like,
I
just don't know. And so I think it's very much a lot of questions still around this Spurs side, what they want to be, where they're trying to go. But that being said, obviously having Heung-min Son, having Kulusevski, who looks like he's back, and then having Harry Kane,
have Richarlison back at that
stage. Yeah, they've got the players to do well. But I think it'll be, out of all the games, yeah, as you mentioned, I think this is probably one of the more evenly balanced one, and one of the most exciting to watch.
Absolutely, yeah. Olivier Giroud, it's interesting that you mentioned him actually. 9 goals and 4 assists now in 18 League and Champions League games. He's been superb in a side that is still missing Zlatan, of course. You know, Origi hasn't made the impact at Milan we were probably expecting. But there's players across that Milan side that are really growing into their roles now. Brahim Diaz has had a much better season. Sandro Tonali as well, popping up with a crucial assist at the weekend as well. And in classic Milan fashion, they are tough to beat as well. They win most of their games in Serie A by a single goal. They're not quite in the title race. I think there's a 6-point gap to Napoli. I mean, they are still second in Serie A as it stands, but Napoli look like they are going to push forward and hopefully get over the line for their first Serie A title since the 90s. But Milan, in their first knockout tie in 10 years, you know, I wouldn't bet against them at all. Quickly, Zach, before we go on to the rest of European or the rest of the ties around Europe, Man City versus Leipzig. Yeah. Leipzig have a lot of threats. Christopher Nkunku, of course, might be going to Chelsea. Might be going to Chelsea rather in January, or is it for next summer? Actually?
Well, so supposedly next summer. However, Chelsea are looking into possibly doing it in January as well.
Love it. I mean, he's been superb this season, but Man City, the juggernaut rolls on.
Yeah, this game's going to have goals. Timo Werner's going to be back as well from injury. This game, if there's one game that could end 6-4 or 6-3, I think it actually might be Man City versus RB Leipzig, just based on the history. They obviously played each other in the group stage last season.
There was goals in that.
And the aggregate score was 8-4. And I think one of them as well involves Nkunku getting a hat-trick in one of those games too. So yeah, it's going to be a really interesting game. Look, just based off of the way City are at the moment, the way RB Leipzig are, you expect City to annihilate and to dominate. But again, could be a very, very different side at that point. I just expect, this one to have a lot of goals.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Marco Rose has actually had a really underrated start at RB Leipzig. I think they had a tricky first few games, but they're now unbeaten in 11. That's a run that also saw them beat Real Madrid. They beat Celtic twice, quite comfortably. Real Madrid fielded a weaker side in that game, to be fair. But yeah, right off RB Leipzig at your peril. I think Dani Olmo's coming into it. Szoboszlai's been great recently, and Christopher Nkunku just goes from strength to strength. Right, we're going to quickly cover the other tie.
Yes.
Zach, I just want you to say in pretty much one word, Club Brugge or Benfica?
Benfica.
Yeah, Benfica I think that's still unbeaten after about 20-odd games this year under Roger Schmidt.
Maybe it's like my underdog Benfica for this.
I love it. I love it. Okay, Eintracht Frankfurt versus Napoli. You were saying off camera that this is a shame that Frankfurt have got.
Yeah, I kind of wanted both these sides to get another team and to try and go further in the competition. Obviously, especially Frankfurt, like their first time in the Champions League or getting to the knockout stage. It would have been great for them to have got a big boy and then try and do a real upset. Look, either one of these sides would be quite nice to see them progress further towards the competition. Napoli playing incredible football. I think probably Napoli edge it for me.
Yeah, you'd think so. If their form continues from this period. Right, Inter Milan versus FC Porto, wearing their shirt today, but unfortunately, I see you going out, guys. I think Inter Milan are going to get better as this season goes on. Difficult result, disappointing result at the weekend, losing the Derby d'Italia against Juventus 2-0. But Romelu Lukaku will hopefully be back to full fitness at that stage. Brozovic has been out recently, of course. And all their defenders have just had a slight drop-off from previous seasons as well. So I think Inter Milan, actually one of my surprise teams to watch as one of those underdogs. PSG versus Bayern, Zach, is the big one. Yeah. What do you think?
Yeah, this is huge. I think this could all come down to the World Cup, in my opinion, in terms of like how relationships go. You've got obviously their front three are all playing for countries that could go really far in that competition. Obviously, with France, Brazil, and Argentina, and depending on how things go, could cause strains in their relationship as a front three.
I totally agree.
And so, depending on how that goes, look, if you are a historical fan, you're going to be going for Bayern Munich. If you're someone that quite likes watching Lionel Messi, so on and so forth, and the front three and the fun that PSG kind of have, then you're going to go PSG. I think for me, just for Lionel Messi, I'm going to go for PSG here. But look, it wouldn't shock me if Nagelsmann also absolutely outplays Galtier.
Yeah, it's an interesting point you make about the egos of the World Cup, because they're also personally driven by individual accolades as well, and that could have a major play. Say, I think Argentina and Brazil are set to meet in the semi-finals if they win both their groups and all their games are there. You know, that's huge. France will get into the mix at some stage, you think, as well. So I think that's a very good point. In terms of this game, I think, as you say, like the last time PSG beat Bayern were without Lewandowski. Yeah. and they probably haven't really found their attack hasn't clicked in the way we probably expected at the start of this year with Sadio Mane's arrival. Having said that, Gnabry's been great, Leroy Sané's been great, but I just fear for that defence, and Musiala as well. I just fear for that defence against the Mbappe, Neymar, Messi trident, which is playing so well right now. Guys, let us know about you. Who do you see coming out on top of these ties? And stay tuned, because we've got a brand new section. So we are asking for controversial opinions about European football, which we can either agree with or disagree with in our new section. So this one comes in from @Nathaniel K. Have a listen to this.
Olivier Giroud deserves to be remembered as one of the greatest finishers to ever grace the modern game.
Thank you very much, Nathaniel. Look out for my tweet next week if you want to get involved with the show. Zach, we heard Nathaniel there, picking up Olivier Giroud, a former Chelsea player, of course. Would you describe him as one of the best finishers to ever grace the modern game?
There are certain things I would describe Giroud as. I think he's one of the best facilitators. If you're a winger, I think he becomes your best mate. One of the best finishers, I think, is quite a punchy statement to give him. He has some fantastic finishes that he's done throughout his career, bicycle kicks, scorpion kicks galore. But yeah, look, if you're thinking about, especially of the modern generation, you're thinking Lewandowski, you're thinking Cristiano Ronaldo,
Aguero,
Kane, right?
And Suarez.
And Giroud just doesn't have the numbers that these guys have. Like, he's a guy who can make something out of nothing at times, which is brilliant to have. But a finisher is someone I see as in the box, scoring 20 plus a season, and that's just not Olivier Giroud.
No, I think this is an interesting point, and it's he deserves his flowers.
He's underrated,
yeah,
for sure.
36 years old, still doing it for Milan. As I said earlier, probably been their key attacking player this year. But as you say, just doesn't have the outstanding record of those players. I would say, though, his France record is absolutely exceptional.
His France record is
I think he's got 49 goals in about 114 games. He's 2 behind Thierry Henry, which he could break in the World Cup, which is an amazing achievement. I know he's had the benefit of not competing with Benzema for lots of that time with his ban or sort of not being included in the French squad for so long. But also his record in terms of what he's won. He's won a World Cup. He's won a Champions League. He's won a Serie A. He's won 4 FA Cups, a Europa League. So he definitely deserves a lot of credit as an amazing player. And as you say, if you just looked at his best goals, people in 30 years will think he should have won a Ballon d'Or if you look at his best goals, all those scorpion kicks, etc. But I know all Arsenal fans watching this will be like, his finishing cost us the league title. And I think 2015-16 went on that really barren run. So for me, not one of the greatest ever finishers, in the modern era. But I respect Nathaniel for getting involved. And thank you very much for doing so. Nathaniel, and for many others, get involved next week with our tweet. Guys, that's all we've got time for on Continental Club Extra for this week. I hope you guys enjoyed the show. Let us know what you want to see us cover next week in next Tuesday's edition. Have a great rest of the week, and we'll catch you later. Bye.